So you got the middle one too.
We have all microphones working today?
Yeah, and we're streaming, so if you want to start the show, you can.
Okay, no, I'll wait on.
Okay. I do most days.
It's just
Go for it, see what happens.
it's pronounced.
That's terrible. That's terrible.
Yes, we are though. That's brave. You're a month away from the Maybe it's just foolish.
You ready?
We're ready.
Okay. Good morning, council, members of SLT, residents. I see that we have quorum this morning, so I call into session this regular council meeting on Wednesday, November 1st at 9 a.m. First up is we ask everyone to stand who can, and we'll have the playing of the national anthem. And next on the agenda, at this time, we have a counselor read the land acknowledgement. And this week, we have, this meeting, we have Counselor Eckert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We begin this meeting by acknowledging the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and acknowledging reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous people.
Thank you, Counselor. I now turn to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that the agenda for the November 1st, 2023 regular meeting of council be adopted as circulated.
Thank you. Any questions? Not seeing any. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Moving to number 5, so we have the disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof, if any, to be declared.
Thank you. After looking at the agenda, does anyone have a pecuniary interest of general nature thereof to declare? Councilor Olson.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I was absent from the last meeting, won't be able to vote on the approval of the minutes.
Okay, thank you, Councilor. Any other Councilor? Not seeing any. Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So moving now to item 6, the adoption of council minutes. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Niznik. Be it resolved that the following minutes be adopted as printed, circulated, and read. C-19/2023 regular council meeting of October 18th, 2023.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? None opposed. Mr. Clerk?
Thank you. So now moving right along to item 7. If this is, if council members have anything they want to lift from the consent agenda, they should identify those items now.
Okay, any councillor want to lift any item on the agenda, on the consent? Not seeing any, Mr. Clerk?
Okay, thank you. Moving now to item 8. I have a motion moved by Councillor Eckhart, seconded by Councillor Kerr. Be resolved that the consent agenda items as listed on the November 1st, 2023 council agenda be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved. To you for discussion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And of course, this is that time if anyone wants to just discuss anything on the consent agenda, now would be the time to do that. Why not? Oh, Councilor Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to talk about, it's 8.3.1, which is the Centennial Park Safety Enhancement. It's becoming clear, I think, from reading documents like this, and well-prepared and a lot of creativity gone into them, that our park is rapidly reaching its capacity, if not for parking, but as for land, for just a few more enhancements that can be done there, which is important to understand when it comes to setting a budget. So I wanted to say thank you to the staff for that. And we also found out, I think, a question that I've had for a long time about the emergency exit from the park. And we now know that that can't be used as a way in and a way out, even for special events, which seem to be a logical way of doing things, but for very good reasons we can't do that. So thank you.
Okay, thank you for those comments, Councillor. Any other debate, discussion on items of the consent agenda? Not seeing any, Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if there's no other questions or comments from the councillors, we could proceed with the vote.
Oh, okay, thank you. Without any further discussion then, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. Now moving to item 10, presentation and consideration of reports. So 10.1.1, we have a motion moved by Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that council receive report 2023-0241, recommendation report for zoning bylaw amendment 56 Fillmore Boulevard for information, and the council direct planning staff to prepare the bylaw for approval of the zoning bylaw amendment for their consideration.
Thank you. Open up for discussion. Any councillor have any questions or comments on this item? Not seeing any, Mr. Clerk?
So we may proceed to the vote then on that?
Oh, I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Mayor? No
All
problem.
those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Eckert.
Is this the time to make comment on 10.1.2?
Not yet.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So on the 10.1.1, all those in favor? Not seeing any opposed. Mr. Clerk, motion carries.
Thank you. So now moving to 10.1.2, I have a motion moved by Councillor Eckhart, seconded by Councillor Niznik. Be it resolved that council receive report 2023-0243 Hayes Street Speed Report for information, and that council direct staff to implement a uniform 50-kilometer-per-hour speed limit on Hayes Street between Regional Road 20 and Metler Road, and that council directs staff to include a traffic calming capital budget item appropriate to size and scope of the preferred option for Hayes Street in the 2024 capital roads budget. Back to you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Thank you. Any councillor have any questions or comments on this item? Councillor Eckert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I am in support of reducing the speed limit down to 50. On on Haste, the extension there that goes down to Mettler. There are a number of things in this report, though, that are concerning to me, comments made or assumptions made. And they will have effect on future motions or efforts taken by this council. And in particular, say Port Robinson Road, but a number of areas around town as well, because it comments on dropping the speed limit in town to 40, and I wanted to address a couple of those issues. So when there's other municipalities around us, surrounding us, and in Ontario, are dropping their speed limits down to 40 in the built-up areas. There's a number of areas, and they do this because everyone knows that the faster you go, the worse the accident is, or I shouldn't say accident, collision. They're not accidents, they're collisions. We hear it all the time on the radio, on TV, to slow down. We know that speed kills. It's one of the big three in serious motor vehicle collisions, along with distracted driving and impaired driving. Speed is right there with them, and sometimes in combination with the other two. If you look around town, we have some mishmash of speed. I was going to comment to make sure we drop the speed down on Haste, because one street over Effingham, it's 50 all the way from Highway 20 all the way down to St. Catharines into Pelham Road. Yet it was 60 one street over on Haste, which is a far, I think, more dangerous road to travel on. One of the comments that is made in the report is it says that by dropping the speed, that people will disregard, drivers will disregard those efforts. I profoundly disagree with that. The vast majority of people driving, and in fact living their lives, obey the laws, whether they're traffic or criminal code or whatever they happen to be. And I think it's time that we start with a kind of a mind shift here in Pelham, and slow things down, especially in the Old Town, I call it, area, where we have businesses, people parking on both sides of the road, and lots of pedestrian traffic, and we want to make it safe for them. If you look at South Pelham is 50 until you get to Glen A. Green School, and then when flashing it drops to 40, but then picks up again to 50 to come into town. That doesn't make any sense to me, especially when you turn right on Port Robinson Road and it's 40. It doesn't make sense. The same kids that are walking on Port Robinson Road to school at Glen A. Green are walking on South Pelham to Glen A. Green, and yet the speed limit picks up to come into town. Doesn't make sense to me. There's a comment there that it will increase people tailgating and possible road rage, although they call it other bad behavior. Tailgating and road rage exists whatever the posted speed limits are, and we can see that on the Queen Elizabeth Highway, the 401, any highway you're on. It doesn't matter what speed you post, those people are out there. Those idiot drivers are out there. And to suggest that simply by dropping the speed limit to 40 kilometers an hour, we're suddenly going to create this whole large group of irresponsible drivers that are going to start road rage incidents and tailgating. The same people that are tailgating on the QEW are tailgating in town. That doesn't change, believe me. Slower speeds are safety. You have more time to react. And the other thing I wanted to speak about was there was a comment in the paper by Constable Ravenick from the Niagara Regional Police that in the 10 months this year so far, there's been 20 tickets issued for various reasons on Port Robinson Road and and Station Street. To me, I hope they're not bragging about that, because that's about 2 a month. And I think you could be giving out 10 in the morning there without any trouble whatsoever. So I'm going to continue my discussions with the Niagara Regional Police, because along with these initiatives, we need to have proper enforcement. And I know the Pelham Active Transportation Committee is actively looking at reducing the speed limit. We're looking at the possibility of the town having its own speed camera radars established in town, stop sign cameras, etc. And that's something we'll look forward to in the future. So I just wanted to make those few comments on the report, because I think it makes some assumptions about drivers in Pelham and our neighbors that I don't think can be supported by any factual evidence. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those comments, Mr. Eckert. Councillor Eckert, I think we all around the table would like to see more blue and whites on our roads, and I, for one, feel you can lower the speed to whatever, but unless we have the enforcement factor in the community, it doesn't have the desired effect. Nothing works better than a speeding ticket, that's for sure. Any other comments? Councillor Kerr?
Yeah, following along thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, and following Councillor Eckert's comments. Most of you probably received the Green Scene regional paper that came out in the last 2 weeks, and in the middle of it was a listing of all the red light cameras, intersections, a list of where the automated radar stations were located. And most of us have been following in the news the issue on Rice Road in Welland of people being incredibly upset about it, to the point of vandalizing the speed camera. We're in kind of, society's moved into a phase of everybody's impatient about everything, it seems, and they can't quite understand. I recognize what was very interesting, though, to look through that particular map was that every municipality except Waynfleet, Port Colborne, and Pelham, or no, had a digitized radar camera. Lincoln had it, Grimsby had it, Port Colborne, or St. Catharines has it, Niagara Falls has it. West Lincoln has one, but Pelham doesn't anywhere, which I found quite interesting to think about at a regional level of trying to implement where these types of things were going to be employed. We recognize we have issues in different parts of the town, and I'm sure if we put one in one spot of the town, another part of the town is going to say, we want the same thing. It's all, one begets the other as it goes along. I concur that the speed limit issue is there, that educating, we've noticed, and in dealing with Mr. Cook and the infamous school crossings in Fenwick where they put up the bollard in the middle of the road, and some people have decided that those are targets to be hit with their vehicles rather than driving around them. It just kind of shows the level of difficulty or the people that we're working with. I measured the one in Wellington Heights and it was 13 and a half feet. And people were saying, I can't drive through there. If you can't drive through a 13 and a half foot opening with an SUV, which people are saying they can easily do, it's just showing the level of I'll call it low-level anger about this issue. I agree with Councillor Eckert. 95% of the people in this town are law-abiding, will slow down when they're required to slow down. It happens. But it's something that we hear about as much as anything. I think I was told back before, the three things you'll hear the most about when you get on council, one will be about budget, the second will be about speeding, and the third will be about water. And it's held true in my first year on council that those are the three things I hear the most about. So with that in mind, I guess it's a matter of its discussion going forward of looking at opportunities. I am appreciative of Councillor Eckert pushing with his background in law enforcement and the ability to move along things, and hopefully we can come to a resolution to help everybody in this community. I'm all for reducing speed limits as well. I think you start with that and then work from there. But if we can get more enforcement, The challenge is people, the challenge of the radar signs that I have heard was that they don't know about it till a month after the fact. And in fact, one particular person in Wainfleet, my understanding is, has received 4 speeding tickets in the mail without ever realizing that they had one by the time they got their first ticket. And then a week later, there was another ticket, and a week later, there was another ticket on the vehicle. Because normally, when you have law enforcement doing radar, they pull you over. It's you know instantly you've done something wrong on those and the little signage that was with them. So hopefully we can find a way to educate the public a little bit more about it in critical areas. But I agree with Councillor Eckert, especially with South Pelham. The speed limit changes are just, they don't make rational sense.
Yeah.
Allowing an escalation in speed once you're past the school, especially heading into the center of the core of Font Hill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kerr. The town will, of course, be getting our first camera-operated intersection camera at Highway 20 in Victoria. I'm surprised it's not. Is it now? Yes, I thought it was supposed to be September, October. So at first there was supposed to be warnings. Is there a warning sign there then, Councillor Kerr?
Yep.
And that's for so long, and then the becomes effective.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, but that's specifically a red light camera versus a speed camera.
Yes, yes, yep,
Kind of 2 different issues.
yes.
But I agree with you there. But that's the only traffic enhancement that the town of Pelham has.
Yes.
At everybody else in the
Yes,
peninsula.
well, and I believe that you'll see that most of the roads that have them, and perhaps Public Works can correct me if I'm wrong, the region, I believe, decides where they go, and I would think that most Highway 20 has been identified as a dangerous intersection, and I'm sure West Lincoln, I'd be surprised if that wasn't on Highway 20 also. Rice Road, high traffic. So I don't think you see them in an urban area. Before I go to Councillor, let's hear from Public Works.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, so you are correct. The region determines the community safety zones where this Vision Zero program is being implemented. What I can say is that the region is also looking into putting in place a community safety zone on Highway 20, which would be between Rice Road and Lookout Street.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to Councillor Eckert.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, the region is in a test area, although I'm not quite sure why they need to do that when other municipalities have had these for well over a year. But they have 4 speeding cameras that they're setting up. Those are going to be rotated throughout the region on a, I don't know what the basis is, but they will only be on regional roads that are designated as community safety zones. And when we had the representative from the region at the PATC, I asked those questions, and he stated very clearly that the region would not be assisting municipalities like Pelham with our streets because they will only be doing regional roads.
Yep.
So those cameras will be rotated, and then at some point in time, depending on how this study goes, they may be increasing their cameras. But Mr. Maher is absolutely correct. We did bring this up at the PATC of why Rice Road and stops halfway up the hill at Peachtree didn't make sense. But apparently, they can only put them in for a certain distance. And so there's nothing, however, to stop the region from putting another one in, say, at the top of the hill from Haste out to Effingham. There's nothing to stop the region, and I think the gentleman at the meeting was going to look into that. So just to follow up on what Councillor Kerr said.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kerr?
Just one last comment through you, Mr. Mayor. When I looked at the map, all of those speed signs are associated with school zones.
Yes.
So every one of them, the one on Rice Road is where Alexander Kuska School is. The one in West Lincoln is associated with the schools where Smithville, the Christian school is. So they're not on Highway 20,
Okay.
interestingly, but they are currently associated with school zones. And I think in a lot of cases, most of us are hearing it where the speeding is an issue is within proximity of school zones. So hopefully we can encourage more of that. And if the town can take advantage of it, then in the future, I'm all for it.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to Council Olson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. In fact, the Highway 20 was the third busiest road in the region when the study was done for the community safety zones, exceeded only by Lundy's Lane and McLeod Road.
Wow.
So that's a very busy road, and they measure the number of driveways, entrances, and all those types of things. And it would be a good thing if we could include Lookout and the condominiums at the top of the hill, because it ends right by the school there, and it doesn't look into Tim Hortons or the gas stations or any of those other things that are so busy during the day. So. Those are that, and I think the next schedule is probably coming out for June of next year for the location of the next cameras, and maybe at that time we will have a schedule because the signs are up and everything for it.
So the only I remember on the region, before I go to Councilor Nesnick, is, and I applauded the fact that it's staff and statistics that go by where they put the cameras. So they're not being, which I applaud, they don't go to the politicians aren't making the judgment calls here. They're using statistics as to where to place the cameras. So I think I'm all for that, because let's get the dangerous intersections, dangerous roads looked after first, and then as we go down the list, use other criteria if that's possible. Councillor Nesnick.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, just maybe a question for Public Works. So I know other communities, I think one up near Hamilton, and I forget the name of the community up there, but they did just reduce their Main Street traffic speed limit to 40 kilometers an hour throughout the entire main area of town. So what steps would we need to take to make that happen, as you say, as I echo Councillor Eckert's concern with regards to the shifting in speed limits? So when you come into the outskirts of town, it's 50, goes to 40, back to 50. So what would make sense, or could we ask staff to come up with a plan that, at the outskirts of town, it reduces to 40 and it stays 40 just consistently through that South Pelham area, because it is a very, very busy street. And really, the traffic is so busy that you almost can't go any more than 50 anyways on a good day, because there's so many cars there, you just have to slow down because everyone else is slowing down or turning or that sort of thing. So why not make it 40 kilometers an hour from, say, Pancake Lane, or even go back to Spruce Side and make it from Spruce Side on up and right through to the other side of Highway 20, down towards Hurricane Road, that way, as well as Port Robinson. So all those major, more feeder roads. Welland Road, again, we just had a rollover on that street due to probably speed, going around a corner, a little curve, a little too speedy, ended up on his roof. Luckily, no one was injured, but again, that's a 50-kilometer area through there, and it is a residential area. So I do think we can make it 40 kilometers an hour in this town if we put some effort into that. So that would be my thoughts.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Nesnick. I see the CAO has some comments.
Good morning. I think if it's the will of council to receive a report, perhaps you should do that by motion. You have the opportunity. It's properly in front of you at the moment today, although the report's focused on a specific area. I just want to say a couple of things. First off, you start with the law, and the Highway Traffic Act is that which governs speeds. That's passed by the province of Ontario, and it says that the speed limit shall be 50 kilometers per hour in urban areas unless posted otherwise, and it shall be 80 kilometers an hour in rural areas unless posted otherwise. Right. And we've all been taught that, but those numbers aren't arrived at by accident. So we will, if it's the will of council, we will write you a report. I have to, it's that now we have the sound of one hand clapping. Everyone wants a lower speed because speed does cause danger, and that is entirely true. There's plenty of evidence to support that. We have to recall that you're here for multiple purposes, and it is important that goods and people flow freely across our roads. You're also here to govern to make sure that you can get from one end of the town to the other end of the town in a reasonable amount of time. So there's no constituency for that. No one is going to sign a petition. No one is going to call you up and say, I like 50. You're only going to hear the sound, people who want it lower. And so there is a reason to do targeted, to have different rates of speed in different areas, even in the urban areas. There are very good arguments for 40 kilometers per hour adjacent to schools, to medical centers, to places of worship, etc. The default law in Ontario is 50 kilometers per hour in urban, and that's also for a very good reason. So I just sort of want us to all be cognizant of you sort of wear two hats when you have to make these decisions. And I'm sure ultimately, if it's your will, we'd be very happy to write you a report and explain how or where we could target changes to the existing speed limits. But the default law is 50, and it's 50 for a reason. And if you're going to consider making that change, it should be based on evidence, as his worship sort of indicating. So I'd invite you to discuss or debate or simply direct us to come back with a report. We could do that next year. I would submit to you that late Q1 would be reasonable. You're just about to start the heart of the budget process, and that really wipes out most of December and part of January. And then we have a number of other large items coming your way, and we need public work that require the attention of public works. That being said, we're certainly obviously happy to take direction. It's just that there are two sides to this debate, and only one side is vocal. There is no champion for the other side, and you, by way of policy, have to govern for both. And with that being said, I'll stop talking and happy to take a motion should there be you desire to provide us with one.
Yeah. And Councillor Eckert, you did have your hand up before, sir?
Just one other thing, and it just comes to mind from the comments from the CEO. I don't know if anybody else has, but this is a topic that's near and dear to me. And in the last few weeks, I've been traveling around town, and I've been timing my trips. And we're talking a matter of seconds difference in some cases, and in some cases less than a minute, to go from Rice Road and Highway 20 all the way up to turning on to Port Robinson Road was a difference of 5 seconds going 40 and going 50. So I understand we need to have people move freely through the town, goods and services, but we also want them to go safely through the town, and we have to consider our residents. And when you look at how much time it actually takes you by going slower, it's negligible. So no matter what people tell you, it's negligible. So just we'll keep that in mind for the future. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kerr.
I appreciate the CAO bringing up, data always is a good thing to have. It's kind of a question that I've got actually from Mr. Cook, because I believe, and not to say we're going to do this everywhere, but with the digitized speed signs, is there data collected with the vehicles that go by, the average speed they're going by, the number of vehicles, those kind of things, that we might be gaining some data from things that we have put up, recognizing they're in single direction and only at that particular point? I just wasn't sure. For some reason, that stuck in my mind that we can come up with some averages out of things like that.
Let's go to Mr. Cook. Oh, they don't give you a microphone.
No, they don't. It's probably not a good idea most days. Through the mayor, the speed signs that we put up, the driver feedback displays, do actually collect traffic speed data, speed and volume on a real-time basis. Where the cellular services are strong enough in this town, and we all realize that a lot of places they're not, but we do get real-time data for most of these things. And as the cell service increases and we get a little better connection in some areas, we'll just keep putting more online, but we can get them. And the speeds are generally found within the 85th percentile, or are about 12 kilometers of the speed limit in a lot of places where they're putting them. So Whether they're effective in informing people that they're speeding, or that was just always the way people drove, it's hard to say, but that we do find the 85th percentiles are around 12 to 14 kilometers of the posted speed limit.
Councillor?
Thank you, I appreciate that, and I'll deflect over to our law counselor. At what point are tickets normally issued for speed above a limit?
Councillor Eckert?
Well, the problem is that there's always been this grace period where everybody accepts. So you know that if you're on the QEW, the 401, et cetera, if you're going 20 kilometers over the speed limit, you're probably not going to get a ticket. And in fact, you could probably pass an OPP officer and not even be pulled over. In town, officers generally, I know in my day, and it's been a while since I've done radar, but it was always kind of a 15 kilometer. I even did radar when it was still miles per hour. So, but it was 15 kilometers, 15 to 19 kilometers. You would get pulled over, maybe get a warning, but anything over that, you were probably getting a ticket. So that's.
Thank you. Any other questions while we have Mr. Cook at the microphone? Thank you, Mr. Cook. Any other comments on either asking staff for a report? Anyone feeling like doing a motion? If not, Councillor Eckert?
Yeah, thank you. Do we deal with the motion that's on here first, and then I would ask for a motion to look into that? Is that?
I defer to the clerk, but I think it's entirely, you do have a motion in front of you, so I would deal with that first. And secondly, before we move on to the next topic, while you're still on the appropriate topic, should you wish to provide additional direction to staff, that's a great time to bring a motion.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Wink?
Yes, so through you, Mr. Mayor, looking at dealing with this report, and it's all been good conversation, but we've been presented three different options on what we consider, what we should be considering. And I turn to through you, Mr. Mayor, to the director. We've got three different options. How effective are the flashing lights on the signs compared to the actual digital signs? Which are more effective to slow down traffic?
So I'll go to the Director of Public Works, or should we be turned to Mr. Cook? Your call, Mr.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I may defer to Mr. Cook for the specifics on this one, but the flashing beacons will not collect data. That's one. If we do have signal, then the speed display signs, they will collect data for us. So that's one of the differences that we can, with the digital speed display signs, we can actually collect data for traveling traffic, the speeds. Mr. Cook, do you have any idea? I don't know if we would have exact data on them, which was more effective, but I'll pass it over to you.
Through the mayor, the Transportation Association of Canada, as well as the Ontario Traffic Council, has done a number of studies on the effectiveness of all of the traffic calming kind of techniques within their manual, which is what we tend to follow. The flashing light on a speed sign, you might get 3 to 5 kilometers an hour change. The driver feedback sign is somewhere mildly greater than that, is what they've determined. And then the speed cushions, which are also in the report, are about an 8 to 12 kilometer an hour drop.
Councillor?
Yes, thank you for that. With respect to the speed cushions, can someone, I know you've got it in here in the report, but we don't have any speed cushions per se in the town. So is it just a raised up area on both sides of the road, or?
Mr. Cook?
Through the mayor, the speed cushion is designed specifically to allow emergency service to cross over them without reducing speed, so response times remain the same. They are essentially somewhat like the speed humps on Hay Street, but with the sections cut out so that a vehicle with a certain wheelbase can travel over them without reducing speed. But for the majority of drivers, you would feel there would be enough of a physical vertical change that it would make it very uncomfortable to drive over.
So in this report, there's 3 different options. However, there's no suggested recommendation by staff. What would, knowing full well how dangerous this area is, particularly for walkers, and the fact that you've got 15 kids going on school buses every day in that area, and there's a lot of blind spots, what would you recommend is the best alternative?
To Mr. Cook?
Through the mayor, I'm always going to fall back on policy when it comes to recommendation. Policy doesn't actually work in this area. It's outside the urban boundary. We're talking about a physical change, like a traffic calming technique. Our current policy doesn't really recommend anything outside the urban boundary. Although with the proximity to the urban boundary in this case, and with the number of residential houses in a row, recommendation would be to try out the rubber speed hump, or speed cushion in this case. If it does prove effective and it doesn't affect emergency service response in this area, it might be a technique we can use in a number of other spaces.
Councillor?
Yes. So my thought is, if we're ever going to try and slow down traffic without going full tilt on 40 kilometers per hour throughout the entire town, this might be a good location to test out the speed cushions. So I agree with Councillor Eckhart that we do have to reduce it down to 50. And I would suggest that we go with option 3 then.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cook. So on the options, we've heard from Councillor Wink putting his vote on option 3. Is there any other comments? Councillor Eckert.
Just a question. Does option 3, I'm not seeing where it recommends dropping the speed from 60 to 50. I only saw that up before the option 1, where it says council may direct staff to reduce the speed, but I didn't see in any of the options where it says reducing the speed.
Go back to Councillor Cook. Councillor, go back to Mr. Cook.
In the top?
It's in the top.
Mr. Maher, maybe.
Yeah, it's in
Or Mr. Moore.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the way the recommendation reads, the staff is recommending that we drop the posted speed limit to 50 kilometers for the 60-kilometer stretch as well to make it consistent. So that's a separate recommendation. And then the last paragraph in that recommendation is for council to decide which type of traffic calming or speed display you want to have in place. Just a point, they're not mutually exclusive. So there's option 1, which describes one type of treatment, option 2, and then option 3. So you could actually pick more than one specific option to be implemented in this case.
Excellent. Okay, okay, thank you. Councillor Kerr.
So just to clarify in my mind, and I think we're saying, okay, reduce it to 50K. That's part of this. And we can choose either option 1, option 2, option 3, or option 1 and option 2, blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
My own personal instinct is I think we go with the reduced speed and we go with option 3 as a test case, as was mentioned, that can be implemented elsewhere around the area. We've got prior experience with some of the other options that we've looked at, and I think this is a way to start moving down the path. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? So there are 2 different items going from 60 to 50, plus choosing a 1, 2, or 3 as an option. And we have 2 councillors that have voiced their favorite option is option 3. Any other further discussion? Also, I'll turn to the clerk to write up a motion. Do we need a motion on that then to go with 3?
Well, Councillor Niznik has a comment.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Nestor.
Sorry, excuse me, just, excuse me, one clarification in option 3. So it said the speed cushion's between 1615 and 1631 Hayes Street. So is that, just through you, Mr. Mayor, could I ask maybe Mr. Cook, where is that located? So is that above or below the hill, I guess, is my question on Hayes?
Mr. Cook, please.
Get your exercise today.
Yeah, I got the steps in. Through the mayor, Hay Street provides a bit of a challenge in there's just geometry where we can actually put these things in a safe place. So the locations that we decided are basically on that straight section where all of the driveways are, just after, I think it's 1631, down kind of beyond that next little slope. So right in that same area where there's about 4 driveways or four residences, that's where these will go. If we try to put them anywhere else, we could actually potentially make the road less safe for drivers going speed limit or not. But it will just be in that straight section, kind of below the first hill and just before the next little slope down.
Okay.
So north of the stop sign, then, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
North of the three-way stop.
Oh, perfect, okay.
Yeah, somewhere just before you hit Lookout Golf Course and just before you start going up through the hillier section of Hay Street on the way to Brewerton. Yeah, but it's a nice straight piece of road, and that's where we think we can actually put these things.
Okay, that's terrific. So it's from, I'm trying to think of the street that cuts up there, just sorry.
Brewster.
Overholt, so it's between Overholt and Mettler?
No, the
No.
other would be the other direction, so between Overholt and Brewerton.
Between Overholt and Brewerton, okay. So, but below the hill, the steep hill?
Yeah. Below
Okay,
the-
thank you very much. Yeah, because I think if you put it above the hill, that would be pointless. Thank you.
For sure.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. Any other comments before I turn to the clerk? I'll turn to the clerk.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the original motion was moved by Councillor Eckhart and Councillor Niznik. If they're agreeable to the friendly suggestion by Councillor Wink to include option 3 in the 3rd paragraph of the original resolution, we could proceed on that regard. So I'll just read the motion as it's been amended. Be it resolved, the council received the report 2023-0243 Hay Street Speed Report for information. The council directs staff to implement a uniform 50 kilometer per hour speed limit on Hay Street between Regional Road 20 and Mettler Road. And the council directs staff to include a traffic common capital budget item with the preferred option, number 3 from this report for Hay Street in the 2024 capital roads budget.
Okay. The mover and seconder agreeable with that?
Yes.
Thank you.
So if there's no other questions, Mr. Mayor, you can proceed with the vote.
Okay, we'll go around the shoe one last time. Any other comments? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Thank you. I don't see any opposed. The motion carries, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So now moving to item 10.1.3, I have a motion moved by Councillor Kerr and seconded by Councillor Wink. Oh, sorry, we have Councillor Wink has a question, I believe.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Would this be the appropriate time to ask for a staff report?
You're right.
You're right, yes.
On speeding?
Okay, I'll turn to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So in my undue haste to come to the conclusion of the meeting, I forgot that. But this would be the appropriate time for council if they wanted to ask for a staff report to come back on looking at 40 kilometers throughout the urban boundary of Font Hill
Okay, so we need a mover and a seconder?
or other urban boundaries as well, sorry.
Okay, yeah, Councillor
Mr. Mayor,
Kerr.
I would think that if we're looking at Pelham as urban boundaries, we should be including Fenwick as an urban boundary unit as well within the consideration, personally, because you're treating one urban area
Yeah,
differently than
yeah, I
another
would
urban
think, the two urban boundaries, sure.
So if that's the direction of staff, I would need you
Okay.
to look for a mover and a seconder.
Councillor Eckert as a mover and Councillor Kerr as a seconder.
And if there's no other questions or discussion.
Yeah, any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'll casually look around the table to see if I forgot anything else before I move to the next item on the agenda. 10.1.3, I have a motion moved by Councillor Kerr, seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that council receive report 2023-0218, current and future use of Old Pelham Town Hall, the Chief Administrator's report for information, and the council defer consideration of this topic for potential inclusion in the planned strategic plan update expected to occur in February of 2025.
Thank you. I see Councillor Olson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have to say, with respect, that the report is insufficient in many ways. Number one, staff was directed to explore potential grant funding opportunities, and that was one of the purposes in bringing this. And the other was the notion of a study to engage a consultant to perform the building condition assessment. We know we've learned a lot, and our staff has taught us a lot about how to apply for a grant. And the times when we're prepared in advance with the knowledge that we've asked for here, we have much better chance of getting a grant. So I'm a little bit disappointed in this. However, it reminds us all of the challenge we have ahead of us with the $20 million that's estimated to be required for public works, the fire department, and the library, which is upcoming, and we know that's going to be a real stretch in times that aren't exactly favorable. But I can go along with this, I think, because it's going to come up again, and I think all the strategic plans, the whole strategic plan comes up for review midterm, so that would be fine for me. But I think this leaves the potential for missing out on grants that might be there, and it might miss out on some of the low-hanging fruit that's around it for the improvement in the building, because it's difficult for me to see how we can be asking for more space when we have an underutilized building sitting down the road there that's used 125 days a year. And it makes it a little more difficult to explain to somebody, you've got an empty building and you're doing this across the street. So I don't, not sure that's, it works for me, but I'm accepting this as a way forward and keeping it on the radar and assuming that we're going to be working on getting the usage of the building up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those comments, Councillor Olson. Any other comments? Councillor Kerr.
I understand Councillor Olson's position on it, and yes, we have the opportunity for the 2025. Staff are working on so many things at the moment. They have to allocate resources to do things under certain periods of time where the greatest response is. Yes, there may be opportunities for grants, but we have to prioritize time and people and everything else into this. One thing, I guess, coming back to is if we feel we have an underutilized facility, maybe there's missing thought process of opportunities of how to advertise its capacity for groups that maybe aren't even or have never considered it, to increase its usage right now. But I agree that in the future, yes, we look at that. We have some major capital expenditures coming. Expanding area, I think probably from my perspective, the fire hall and the library are two absolutely critical things that are coming to the forefront, basically on facilities that require such upgrades to maintain themselves as is, which they currently, we know the library needs it to meet standards that are going to be required very shortly. So with that, I understand the background of this submission. that we, if we can look at things and potential grants and opportunities, I think people are not going to miss those particular types of items, but recognizing that you can only think in so many directions at once, that might be a bit of a challenge. But I'm quite happy to receive this right now, recognizing that in 2025 that we need to take a real hard look at things, midterm, and push this one forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kerr, for those thoughts. Any other comments on the report? Not seeing any, I turn to the clerk.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if there's no other questions, we could move on the vote on that.
Oh, I'm sorry. So all those, to receive this report, all those in favor? And none opposed, motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So now we have nothing under unfinished business or new business. Moving to item 13, presentation and consideration of bylaws. I do have a motion moved by Councillor Wink and seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved, the Council of the Town of Pelham, having given due consideration to the following bylaw, do now read a first, second, and third time and do pass same. And the Mayor and Clerk be here and are hereby authorized to sign and seal the bylaw. Bylaw 60-2023 being a bylaw to regulate outdoor swimming pools and hot tubs on private property in the Town of Pelham, and repeal bylaw number 3389, brackets 2013. For discussion, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on this item? Not seeing any, Mr. Clerk. So I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 14, motion and notice of motion. I have been advised by Councillor Hildebrand that you'd like to introduce a notice of motion.
Okay, Councillor Hildebrand.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. Whereas prior council approved 17 decorative street lights, composed of 12 of which were LEDs and 5 of which were gas lit as part of Fenwick's revitalization. And whereas these 5 gas-lit lights have had significant outages and associated operational and maintenance costs, therefore council requests staff to provide a report to council by the first quarter of 2024 exploring the recommended efficient and sustainable solutions to address the 5 gas-lit lights.
Thank you. And as a notice of motion, I believe there's no debate on this.
No, just notice.
Yep. Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Hildebrand.
Thank you.
To the clerk.
Now moving to item number 15, be it resolved, we have a motion by Councillor Eckhart and seconded by Councillor Hildebrand. Be it resolved that the next portion of the meeting be closed to the public in order to consider matters under Section 239(2) of the Municipal Act as follows. Personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal employees, and labor relations or employee negotiations, one item, consideration of appointments to advisory committees, and C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposal of land by the municipality or local board. 2 items located in Ward 2. For you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? No. My motion carries to move in camera.
Thank you. So just give us a minute to shut off the streaming and